Brand new polling data has people losing their minds over Donald Trump possibly losing. What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back in with a new video, and today we have to talk about the 2024 presidential election because people are panicking yet again, and I know, that's not something new. It seems like every other day, no, every other hour at this point, Republicans on Twitter doom and gloom about everything, whether it's about fundraising, whether it's about something completely random, it doesn't matter. There's someone, or usually a group of people on Twitter, especially on the right, that doom about everything. And people are losing their minds over a brand new poll from Morning Consult, aka Morning Consult. Because look at the top line. Donald Trump is losing to Kamala Harris by 4 points. And everyone's running with it. They're all saying this is proof of Harris winning in a landslide. It's officially over for Trump. That's what a bunch of people are saying. So I decided, you know what? We're going to spend an entire video looking at the recent polling that has Harris up by a couple points and explain why the top line, especially on Morning Compost, makes no sense whatsoever when you actually dig into the internals. Now, I want to be clear. I am not saying every poll that has Harris winning is fake. I'm not saying that whatsoever. Hell, I'm going to admit that, you know, CBS News, they have Harris up by a point. Same thing with, like, Reuters. TIP, they released a poll, which, by the way, TIP is one of the most accurate pollsters in America, and they have Harris up by 1, which, funny enough, that's actually a swing towards Trump since their last poll, but no one's going to mention that. Either way, I'm mostly talking about Morning Consult, Civics, SurveyUSA, which I don't think SurveyUSA or even Civics, they're faking their data. I just think that they are dealing with an incredible response bias. But Morning Consult, I really believe they're pulling some shenanigans here. I know that sounds crazy, but let's look at the internals that they released, which, by the way, anyone find it very odd that they only release part of their internals? Find that very strange. They don't release everything. You have to pay them like $30 a month. I'm not going to do that. But look at some of these results. Look at independents. Let's start with independents. Look at that. It's Harris plus 5, which compared to 2020 is bad. Back in 2020, independents broke for Biden by over 13 points. So that's an 8-point shift in what? 4 years? But somehow, according to Morning Compost, Harris is still up by 5. Which is identical to what Biden won by back in 2020. How? If independents broke for Trump, or at least swung towards Trump by like 10 points or whatever, you would expect at least a 1-point shift, maybe even a 2-point shift, but no. According to them, there is no shift whatsoever. In fact, it's the exact same. Is that really possible? Right off the bat, that tells me one of two things. Either they're full of shit and they're making stuff up, or it's a very Democratic electorate. And some people were claiming in the comments in this tweet that it was D plus 6. Now, I cannot confirm it because they don't release these numbers. I don't know why. It's behind a paywall. But if it's even D plus 4 or 5, that means that they're claiming the electorate in America is going to get 4 to 5 points more Democrat compared to 2020. And that could explain how Harris is doing so much worse with independents, but somehow still up by 4. And hell, not only that, she's at 48%. That's just not going to happen. So you're going to tell me that if she gets 45% of independents, she's going to be above 50%? When Biden, who won independents by 13 points, got over 50% with them, barely cracked 51%. And that's with this electorate being much more Democrat than it will be in 2024. Yeah, right. You see the problems. And not only that, look at black voters. They have Harris winning this group by only 50. That's not a misquote. Somehow, they have Harris up by 4, but they have black voters shifting over 30 points Republican. Young voters, same thing. Look at this, 18 to 34. Harris is up by 9 points with them. You know what? Let's look at age. Back in 2020, oh yeah, young voters voted for Biden by a lot. 18 to 29 voted for him by 24 points. And I know this is 18 to 34, but let's just say fine by 20 points, whatever. That's a 10-point shift. How the hell is Trump doing 10 points better at least with young voters and 30 points better with black voters, but he's still down by 4? He's losing by 4 points and Harris is at 48%? What? Does no one see a problem with that? I'm not saying they're faking their data, but it makes you really wonder, what the hell are they doing? How do you get to this conclusion that, oh yeah, Kamala Harris is not even cracking 70% with black voters, not even cracking 50% with young voters, but even independents, she's at 42%. But somehow she gets to 48% of the vote. Bull crap. This is a pile of crap that I cannot believe that people fell for. Again, I am not saying they're outright faking their data. It's entirely possible they're dealing with response bias. Fine. But the more you look at this, there's really one of 3 explanations. One, they're full of shit and faking their data, which is entirely possible. How do you explain this? It is so bad that it is entirely possible it was faked. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but that's a possibility. Number 2, they just overstated the number of Democrats in the sample. Fine, whatever. They didn't weigh it properly, and they ended up with like a D+5 electorate. Fine, whatever. That's entirely possible as well. Which, by the way, would confirm the theory that we're seeing a response bias. Because no way in hell are we getting a D+5 electorate. The last time that happened was 2012. Does anyone really think we have an electorate similar to 2012 and 2020? I mean, just, that sounds crazy. And number 3, and this is entirely possible, we just don't know because, again, Morning Compost doesn't release their numbers. They have Harris winning like 49% of the white vote, or something crazy like that. Which I think's possible. That's the only explanations. If she's doing that good with white voters, it could explain how she's crashing and burning with black voters, with young voters, Hispanics more than likely, but still be at 48%. That's the only explanation. And I highly doubt that's going to happen. I just don't see any proof that, oh yeah, white voters are going to swing 10 points towards Harris. No. That's not going to happen. To me, that sounds like a bunch of Democrat-leaning whites. But they're just taking polling more often. They're inflating the sample. They're making it seem like, oh my goodness, Harris is doing so much better than Biden was. She's up by 4 points. Those are the only explanations for this garbage. And I think this is one of the only ones that's faking their data. I don't think Civics is faking their data. I don't think SurveyUSA is either, which we'll get to in a minute. But this is the only one where you look at these crosstabs and it makes you really wonder, how the hell did they get Harris to 48%? Now, I know some of you might be saying, well, you're just biased. You know, it's only one pollster that's showing this stuff. It's a fluke. Okay, let's look at SurveyUSA. All right, again, I don't think they're faking their data. I really believe this is a response bias. I really believe it. Morning Consult, though, that's just a mess. But let's look at SurveyUSA, because they have Harris down by 3. But somehow, they have independents tied. What? Independents are tied? But Trump is down by 3? If the sample was the exact same as it was back in 2020, it should be like a Harris +1 at most, not Harris +3. But you look at the party affiliation, it's 38% Republican, 41% Democrat. That means SurveyUSA their sample is much more Democrat than it was back in 2020. That's not gonna happen. I don't care who you are. There's no way in hell we're gonna see the electorate become more Democrat. Just look at the Gallup polling. Party affiliations like R+7. I'm not saying it's be R+7, but to claim that's gonna be D+3, when even back in 2020, it was, what was it? My party, it was, D+1. So it's gonna be even more Democrat than it was back in 2020. No. That's not gonna happen. But unlike the garbage poll from Morning Compost, you read the rest of the numbers, and you can tell that this just seems like a basic response bias. For example, look at ideology. They claim the electorate's going to be 27% liberal. Back in 2020, the ideology of America was right here, 24% liberal. Even look at the moderate number. Biden won moderates by 30. Right now, they have moderates going for Harris by only 20. But somehow conservatives, or 16% are saying they're going to vote for Harris, when back in 2020 was 14%. What? I highly doubt that conservative voters are going to break for Harris more than Biden. I don't think that's going to happen. Because everyone knows Harris is to the left of Biden, especially conservative voters. But it could be entirely possible, hey, wait a minute, these are just, the Liz Cheney types, the quote-unquote conservatives, which quite frankly is the only way you can actually explain this. Because you cannot tell me with a straight face, Kamala Harris is going to win more conservatives than Joe Biden did. No. But at the same time, somehow, she's doing worse with independents. She's tied with them. She's getting 41% with them. Hell, Trump is winning over more Democrats than Harris is of Republicans. But somehow she's doing better with conservatives? That's very unlikely. And that points to the idea of, well, maybe this really is just a response bias. Where the more Democrat-leaning conservatives, the Liz Cheney types, they're breaking for Harris. And they're taking polls more often because of a response bias. To me, this seems like common sense that this is just one big response bias where Democrats that, they were so unenthusiastic about Joe that getting anyone, and I mean anyone, over Joe was going to make them even more enthusiastic. I believe that. Because it was such a bad environment for Democrats that a bunch of voters were like, you know what, we're done. It's over. Pack it up. We're done. Trump's going to win in a landslide. But now they got rid of Joe Biden for Harris. They're thinking, well, actually, we have a chance now. And they're going to be more prone to respond to polls. I think that's a legitimate theory. And that's why things happening here. Even civics, which I have some questions about, they have it Harris +4. But independents are breaking for Trump by over 4 points. Yeah. By over 4 points. And their sample was D+5. Anyway, it's 53% female. It's a very wonky sample at times. I'm not saying they faked it, but you realize this is kind of a fairly democratically favorable poll, and the best they could get was Harris +4, which is identical to Biden's margin in 2020. And you notice how these numbers are virtually identical to Morning Consult's numbers, and they had it Harris +4 also. And they had independents, a bit more Democrat. And yet they had basically the same results. Makes you really wonder about that Morning Compost poll. But either way, the more you look at these numbers, the more you realize this just screams a response bias. You cannot tell me with a straight face that it's going to be a D+5 electorate. It's going to be D+4, 3. Even D+2 is seeming kind of unlikely. Just based off of voter registration data, based off the Gallup polling. I don't think it's going to be D+2 or 3. I still think it's R+1. And the fact is, these samples, they need to make it D+3, D+4 to get a Harris lead. if it was R+1 or even D+1, Harris would be up by at most a point. That's the problem for Democrats that I don't think they want to accept. They don't want to accept that, oh, wait a minute. These numbers actually kind of suck for us. When you dig into the internals of every single one of these polls, even Morning Compost, which, even at the beginning of the video, I think they faked part of that. To me, that's what happened there. But either way, you look at the internals of the other polls, like Civics, you look at SurveyUSA, even Rasmussen. You look at the internals, you realize, wait a minute. Harris is only winning because of a huge response bias by Democrats. But anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.